Hey everybody, it's Dr. Sasheen here, coming to you on the Metaphysical Goddess Dr. Sasheen page. So yesterday I started talking about communication and why it isn't working. And today I wanted to piggyback on that and follow up on the idea of the myth adventures of communication. And again, this is going to be pretty short. So if you want to hear more or learn more, you can always contact me directly. What I mean by myth adventures is the myths of communication, which I blogged about also on this page on Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm forgetting which one. The short week always throws me. The myth adventures of communication, as I like to call them, are these myths that we live by that say, if only you had communicated better, or if only you had spoken your truth more, if only you could have been clearer in what you were trying to convey to another person. And I call these the myth adventures because what that line of reasoning tends to do is, number one, it places the responsibility for things going poorly firmly on your communication skills. Sometimes people just aren't listening well and you actually can't do much about that. Communication is two-pronged, sender and receiver model, right? And yes, there's a lot of things happening in between the sender and the receiver, but the reality is that whatever you send to someone can be misinterpreted on the other end. You may not have meant to say it that way, but that's how they heard it. And so then there's the myth of, well, if you had, been clearer, then they wouldn't have misinterpreted it. That's bullshit. We all interpret communication through our own lens, through our own biases, through our own fears, through our own anxieties, through our own everything. And so we may hear a message and be completely baffled by that message, but the sender was very clear in what they were trying to say. And our baffledness actually has less to do with them and more to do with how we have interpreted their message. Now, does that mean that there are not times when people say things that they don't mean? Well, of course not. Of course they say things that they don't mean. But if you get caught up in the myth adventures of communication and you believe, oh, if I could just find a way to communicate better, then you get into this cycle of always blaming communication for what may not be a communication failure. Let me say that again. You get into the cycle of blaming communication for what may not always be a communication failure. Sometimes it's just a failure of the relationship and communication is not going to patch it back together. Sometimes it is a failure of behavior. And communication isn't going to fix the behavior. You have to begin teaching another person how to treat you so that they stop doing the thing that is causing the turmoil in your relationships. Sometimes it's just a failure. Shit happens. People make mistakes. Things get out of hand. And so blaming communication for the failings of everything simply places a lot of pressure on you to become this magnificent communicator. The problem is, you can't actually read another person's mind, and you can't read another person's heart, and you don't know how they're going to take whatever it is you just said. You can only hope that what you have said and what you're trying to convey comes across clearly, but you have no guarantees of that. For instance, and this is the example I use all the time, it's why when people say I love you, so many different things come up. You may have thought it was a fairly innocuous thing to say, and next thing you know, you're in an argument with your significant other because they're like, it was the way you said it. Hence, the idea very simply that you may be communicating as clear as a bell in your own head, but in somebody else's head, you are as clear as mud. So how are you at communicating to yourself? Because that's the other piece of communication, is our internal dialogue. We'll talk more about the internal nature of communication tomorrow. But for today, I would like for you just to think about, if you're blaming communication for the failings of things around you, look at how you're communicating and then recognize that you might need to do some work. You might need to clean up your language and you might need to get clearer, but you also have no control over other people's perceptions or reception of how they are receiving and then acting on your words. That's it for today. As always, this is Dr. Sasheen. In case you do not know, I run the Metaphysical Goddess and Dr. Sasheen Coaching. I'm a divorce mindset energy coach. If you are someone that you know is going through a divorce or in the midst of that kind of life transition and you need some clarity and some help navigating those rough waters, please contact me at support@sasheenmobley.com. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.